Hi, everyone, and welcome to Legal Management Talk, where we're covering every angle of legal management. I'm your host, Justin Askenazy. So, for those who have followed this program for a while, you know that we talk a lot about AI, and rightfully so. It's an important topic in the legal world. But often we're focusing on the administrative tools and that side of things. Today, we're going to focus more on the legal AI tools and the things that are coming up on the legal side of things. My guest today is Renee Jackson. She is a professor of law at the University of New Hampshire and is also the founder and CEO of Dyspute.AI. And so she's created a pretty interesting, cool tool on the AI side. And so we'll talk about that. And then we'll get into legal tools more generally. But first of all, thanks for being here, Renee. Great to see you. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the ability to chat today.
Yeah, for sure. So, as I mentioned, let's kind of start talking a bit about Dispute AI. And can you tell me a bit about what the problem that you identified was and what your thinking was behind the introduction of this tool?
Sure. So the problem we're solving is litigation has become increasingly expensive and unaffordable for many people. And as a result of the cost, no one wants to litigate, and people really want to try to resolve disputes early. In addition, there are lots of, alternative dispute resolution tools like mediation, arbitration, negotiation that are also still expensive and can be time consuming. So we are trying to, make dispute resolution more efficient, more affordable for folks who either can't currently access the legal system because of cost or want a more modern, tool to try to resolve disputes online, using AI. So that was the problem that we're trying to solve. And what we've built is what I think is actually the world's first start to finish dispute resolution platform, meaning that you can start at the beginning with a demand letter, generate a demand letter. The party you send it to can generate a response, and then they can negotiate on their own to see if they can resolve it. And if they can't resolve it on their own, they can graduate to AI-led mediation, which obviously both parties need to agree to do. But we have an AI mediator called Adri who can walk the parties through the mediation process. And then if they are able to resolve their dispute, they can sign a simple settlement agreement in platform, allowing for start to finish dispute resolution. And it's at this point entirely AI-led. We do have plans in the future to have a marketplace of human mediators and lawyers that sit on top of it to offer kind of, human level review at every step of the process. But that's a future feature that we'll be adding.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point about the human oversight that we'll get more into later. But first, I would imagine a lot of people, when they hear about this tool, have their first question is, where do you get this information from for the AI to use in this process? Could you speak a little bit about how you're getting the information, and then I'm sure the follow-up is, how do you keep it secure when the risks abound of AI, in the legal space, worrying about information getting out where it shouldn't be?
Sure. So we have an API on the back end with OpenAI. We're very transparent about that on our website. So that is the data source on the back end currently. We do have plans to offer additional data sources down the road. But basically, what we've done, my co-founder and I have trained Adri, the AI mediator who, guides the parties through the entire process. We've trained her on what good looks like, right? So the two of us combined have over 40 years experience in the legal and tech industry. And so we've trained her on the back end on what good looks like. And that's, part of the proprietary process that we've put together. And then we've got the API with OpenAI. And we've obviously gone through a lot of testing of the product to make sure that it's the outputs are what we expect it to be. As far as the security is concerned, one of the reasons we chose OpenAI is because if you access OpenAI via API, they don't use that data to train their models. And that was very important to us because obviously, if you're in a dispute, it's this sensitive information, it's confidential information, personal information that each side is sharing and trying to get to a resolution. And so that's not something you want out there, being used to train these big LLMs. So that was really important to us to make sure that part, that OpenAI wasn't using any of that data to train their models.
Right. So the reason I wanted to start with talking about your product is that, and finding out about how it all works is because I think that's pretty indicative of a lot of the trends that we're seeing in legal tech and a lot of the innovations that are coming down the road. What areas, I know that is it dispute mediation areas is something that is ready for more innovation. What other areas are you seeing on the tech side that are ready for or ripe for more innovation? What's coming down the pike?
Sure. So obviously we think dispute resolution is ripe for innovation. And there are a lot of tools out there that are meant to make mediators and arbitrators and lawyers more efficient. And, our tool is a little different because we're actually using AI to actually be the mediator to help resolve the dispute. So that's what makes us a little different. And, we think that that's ripe for innovation. Obviously legal tech is hot right now. It seems to be, at least, from what I'm reading, a big area of investment for VCs. I think it's a lot easier and cheaper to get a product out there, ever since the launch of ChatGPT at the end of 2022. And so, I think obviously you're seeing a lot of innovation in due diligence, legal writing and research, e-discovery. That's where I see a bulk of the activity. And then, where our space feels a little more niche, dispute resolution specifically. I'd love to see more innovation in the billing space. That still feels very manual and very difficult for both sides, the law firm and the client. But I think you're just seeing lots of legal tech tools that are trying to help pain points in the process, whether it be in litigation, transactional law, or even patents, and everything in between. So I think the innovation is everywhere. It'll be interesting to see what sticks.
Yeah. And what I always find interesting is that not only are there tech companies that are coming up with products, but there's also, I know several large firms have their own in-house labs where they're working with companies and developing new products. And so for firms that are really thinking ahead on what should we be looking at, where do we need to be focusing right now to stay ahead of the competition? Are there any areas in particular that you're seeing that they should really be highlighting?
I mean, I think, like I said before, I think there are a lot of tools out there that help make lawyers, mediators, arbitrators, professionals in the space more efficient. And I think all lawyers should be trying those tools, right? Even if it's, using ChatGPT without, putting any specific client information in there. Because I think all lawyers need to understand how to use these tools, how they can be helpful, and how it can help them serve their clients, right? So I think ultimately firms should be thinking about tools that can help them serve their clients better. And, so I think there are so many tools in the space. But I think if law firms have that hat on of like, how can we make our clients happier by using these tools? And maybe that means billable hours go down a little bit, but clients are happier. So, I think there's a lot of innovation, a lot of tools to try. And I think law firms have to embrace that. I think head in the sand is not the way to go with these tools because, you've seen the adoption just skyrocket since ChatGPT came out at the end of 2022. And, I don't think anyone thinks AI is going anywhere. And so I think you just have to just start using the tools. I mean, obviously, kick the tires, make sure that the data's, being secured and if it isn't, that you don't share any client information. But I think you have to start using these tools if you're a lawyer or a law firm.
Yeah. And you talked and segued very nicely into my next question, which is the client service aspect of this. I think often we talk about the fact that a lot of lawyers are scared that the introduction of AI tools is going to increase efficiency to the point that it brings down their billable hours, and thus they make less money. But from a client service aspect, what are clients looking for from their firms as these new tools come about? And so what are they interested in when they're trying to work with their firms?
I mean, I think clients are interested in efficiency, right? They want answers fast. And so any tools that can help, lawyers and law firms give them that, I think are great. And they want reduced bills. They want lower rates. They want a 0.1 instead of a 0.5. And because it adds up, right? And I mean, in with this economy, I think most clients are very cost sensitive. And so they are looking for law firms that can be efficient, can offer more modern tools and modern solutions. Like take Dispute.AI, for example. We've talked to, a lot of lawyers and law firms, and, they say that they have clients who are very cost sensitive and they may want to mediate, but they don't want to pay, $3,000 a day to hire a mediator. Oh, and in addition, pay their lawyer to sit there with them. And so I think you can make a client happy by saying, you know what, we've got this tool. I understand you don't want to pay $3,000 a day for a mediator, but we have this tool that we can use that can hopefully get you to settlement. If not, can give us a lot of information to get the parties closer to a settlement, right? So I think, and then clients will appreciate that. And maybe that client saves money for that, dispute. But down the road, if they have another one that, that maybe is more of a bet the company type dispute, well, they're going to come back to that lawyer. They'll come back to that law firm because they'll say, you know what, when I had cost concerns, they worked with me to figure that out. And now it's more of a bet the company thing. And so I want to use them again because I know that they have my back.
Yeah. There's a whole business development aspect to it.
Exactly. Right. It's, this most law firms are not trying to do one and done, clients, right? And so if you think about the long-term business relationship, there may be times where you have to, offer or present a tool to a client that maybe will reduce your billing for that month or that year. But if you're thinking about it long term, if you make them really happy, well, they're going to come back to you and they're going to refer you to their networks. And, and they're going to say, X law firm is really innovative. They tried to help me cut my costs by, using these AI tools, which may or may not be appropriate for every situation. But for this one, it was great. And, I can't recommend them highly enough. And that's the type of stuff that, snowballs into, business development, client development, and just happy clients.
Absolutely. I know we touched on the idea of human oversight earlier, and I don't think anything's changed at the fact that when you're using AI generated work, you have to look it over no matter what you're doing, and especially if you're working on something that's being submitted to a court or something like that. But the question I have, and you can tell me this is a silly question, I have no idea what I'm talking about, but what are the prospects of AI getting better enough to reduce the oversight necessities on a lawyer's part? Because some of these, I think, hallucinations that we've seen are fairly egregious.
Yep.
So I'm assuming it's always improving, but what is the rate of improvement in terms of then requiring man hours to check over everything after it's already been generated?
Yeah, I think I don't have an actual statistic, but
Yeah.
I would say, it's getting better every day, every minute. I mean, just look at API, OpenAI and all the, how frequently they update their models and how much better they are each time. They update almost every month or two at this rate. So I think that AI is getting better. I think for litigation in particular and something that you're submitting to a court, I don't know if we ever get to the point where you don't have to double check that, right? Like it is the lawyer's responsibility. And this was pre-AI as well, like
Sure.
before AI, if you're submitting a brief to a court or a position statement to an agency, you would usually start from a template that, someone else had come up with or someone had used on another case, and you cut and paste the case citations, and it's your job to check them. And so that is true before AI, and I think it'll remain true with AI for the foreseeable future. I mean, when you're submitting materials to a court, that the stakes are higher. Certainly, you've seen in the news all the attorneys who didn't double check it, and they're facing sanctions and fines and disbarment and the range of repercussions. And so I think it's nice to get you 90% of the way, 95% of the way, and maybe couple years from now to get you 99% of the way. But I think there will always be that 1% where the human has to, read it over. Does it make sense? Are these cases real? Do they say what do they say what we're saying they say? So I don't know that we get there anytime soon where it's 100%.
Yeah. Oh, that makes perfect sense. And you're right. It goes all the way back to before AI. So that's not even really a new conversation when you think about it.
No, I mean, I remember when I was coming up in the law firm, and you're writing. I worked at a law firm where we represented employers, and so we're responding to EEOC agency charges or class action wage and hour cases, and it's no different. You still had to find a starting point, whether that was someone else's brief or something that you got off of Lexis or Westlaw, but you still had to, double check everything before you submitted it, certainly before you had the partner review it. So, I think that's all the same. I don't know that that's changed or will change.
Yeah, very true. So thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate this look into what the future holds, because it's changing so rapidly, and I think it's fascinating how companies and firms are getting more creative in the tools they're using to provide better client service.
I agree. And I think most of these tools aren't trying to replace humans. They're trying to, make humans better at their jobs. And I think, the same goes for what we're trying to build. We're trying to help. We're trying to resolve those cases that either aren't currently being brought or they're being brought, but there are cost sensitivities. And so, I think everyone is building in this space is trying to just make lawyers better, make other legal professionals better at their jobs, and solve some of the pain points, as opposed to, trying to replace humans at this point.
Yeah, it's a flashy headline of AI is coming for our jobs, but when you actually look at it, not exactly in most cases.
Yeah, I think it's a little more nuanced than that. Those are clickbait articles for sure.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you being here, and thanks so much to our viewers and subscribers for tuning in. Please subscribe to us on YouTube, and you can also find us anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, you can learn more about ALA at alanet.org. Until next time.